What happens when two powerhouse women clash on live television in the most unexpected way possible? Today we're diving into the shocking moment that left audiences speechless and sent social media into absolute chaos. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts in the comments because you're not going to believe how this unfolded. Kelly Clarkson beamed her signature warm smile as she settled into her chair, the studio lights casting a golden glow across the familiar set. Across from her sat Uma Thurman, the legendary actress whose piercing gaze had captivated audiences for decades. What should have been a routine promotional interview was about to take a turn that nobody saw coming. Uma, it's so wonderful, to have you here, Kelly began, her voice carrying that genuine enthusiasm that had made her talk show a daytime favorite. I have to say, watching you in Pulp Fiction again recently, I was struck by how that role really changed everything for you. Uma shifted slightly in her chair, a barely perceptible tightening around her eyes. Well, Kelly, I think it's important to understand that reducing an actor's entire career to one role, even a significant one, can be quite limiting. Kelly's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. Oh, I didn't mean to reduce anything. I just meant that it was such an iconic performance that really showcased your range. But that's exactly what you did, Uma replied, her tone measured but with an edge that made the studio audience shift uncomfortably. You opened with that film because it's what most people know me for, isn't it? It's the safe reference point. The energy in the room had changed palpably. Kelly's media training kicked in as she tried to navigate the unexpected tension. I think our viewers would love to hear about your newest project. You're starring in a thriller that sounds absolutely fascinating. Uma leaned forward slightly, her intensity increasing. Are you sure they want to hear about that, Kelly? Or would they prefer we discuss my personal life, my relationships, the gossip that sells magazines? I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at, Kelly said, her voice still friendly, but with a note of confusion creeping in. I think you understand perfectly, Uma responded. Let's talk about how this industry works, shall we? How women of a certain age are interviewed differently than men, how we're expected to be grateful for any role, any opportunity to speak. Kelly's producer could be seen frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, but Kelly pressed on, her professionalism intact despite the growing tension. Uma, I genuinely want to hear about your work, whatever you'd like to share. My work, Uma repeated, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Do you know how many times I've sat in chairs like this one, being asked about my work, only to have the conversation steered toward men I've worked with, toward my appearance, toward anything except the craft itself. The studio audience was dead silent now, sensing they were witnessing something far beyond a typical celebrity interview. Kelly's hands clasped together in her lap, a subtle sign of her growing discomfort. I want to focus on your craft, Kelly insisted. I really do. I've always admired your performances, your choices as an actor. Then why did you start with Pulp Fiction? Uma challenged. Why not mention my theater work, my producing credits, the independent films I've championed? Why always that one film where I played opposite a male lead who gets asked about his artistic process while I get asked about my hair? Kelly took a deep breath, trying to reset the conversation. You're absolutely right, and I apologize if my question came across the wrong way. Could you tell us about your role as a producer? That's something our audience might not know much about. Now we're getting somewhere, Uma said, but her tone remained sharp. Though I have to wonder if you're only asking because I called you out on it. The tension was so thick it felt like the studio air conditioning had stopped working. Kelly's usual warmth was still there, but it was strained, like a smile held too long. I'm asking because I'm genuinely interested in all aspects of your career. All aspects, Uma mused, including the parts that make people uncomfortable. The times I've spoken up about inequality, about the way women are treated in this business. Of course, Kelly replied, though her voice carried a slight tremor now. Uma's eyes narrowed as she studied Kelly's face. I wonder if that's true. I wonder if you're prepared for a real conversation about what it's like to be a woman in entertainment. Or if you'd prefer we stick to the sanitized version that makes everyone feel good. The camera operators could be seen exchanging glances, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. Kelly's smile was beginning to crack under the pressure of Uma's relentless intensity. I'm always interested in real conversations, Kelly said, her voice steady despite everything. That's what this show is about, is it? Uma asked, leaning back in her chair with a knowing look. Because, from where I sit, it looks like another platform designed to make celebrities palatable, digestible, safe for consumption. Nothing too challenging, nothing too real. Kelly's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I think you might be underestimating what we do here. Am I? Uma's voice rose slightly, drawing even more attention from the increasingly uncomfortable audience. Then let's test that theory, shall we? Let's talk about the real Uma Thurman, Uma continued, her voice cutting through the studio silence like a blade. Not the version that gets packaged for daytime television, but the woman who's been in this business for over 3 decades and has seen it all. Kelly straightened in her chair, her media training warring with her genuine desire to maintain control of her own show. I'd love to hear about that, but I think our audience deserves respect too. They tune in for uplifting content. Uplifting, Uma repeated, the word dripping with disdain. You mean content that doesn't make them think too hard? That doesn't challenge their comfortable assumptions about how this industry really works. I mean content that doesn't tear people down unnecessarily. Kelly shot back, a flash of steel entering her voice for the first time. There's a difference between honesty and hostility. Uma's eyebrows rose, a dangerous smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Hostility. Kelly, you have no idea what hostility looks like in this business. What you're seeing right now is called honesty, and if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. The studio audience was completely transfixed, some leaning forward in their seats as if watching a tennis match. Kelly's producer was now making more urgent gestures, but both women seemed locked in their own world, oblivious to everything except each other. I'm not uncomfortable with honesty, Kelly said, her voice gaining strength, but I am uncomfortable with using my platform to attack people who haven't done anything wrong. Attack? Uma laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Kelly, darling, if you think this is an attack, you've led a very sheltered life. This is a conversation, albeit one that strayed from your carefully scripted talking points. Kelly's cheeks flushed slightly. We don't script our conversations here. Everything is organic. Organic, Uma mused, like the way you organically opened with the one film everyone always brings up, like the way you organically tried to steer us towards safer topics when things got real. I was trying to be respectful of your time and give you a platform to promote your work, Kelly replied, her composure slipping just a fraction. My work, Uma said, leaning forward again. Let's talk about my work then. Let's talk about the film I'm here to promote. The one where I play a woman who refuses to be silenced, who refuses to play by the rules that men have written for her. Sound familiar? Kelly's eyes flashed with something between annoyance and recognition. I think you're reading a lot into a simple interview format. Am I? Uma challenged. Or am I reading exactly what's there? The careful boundaries, the predetermined narrative, the expectation that I'll smile and nod and give you the sound bites that fit neatly into your show's brand. That's not fair, Kelly said, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself. I've built my career on authenticity, on being real with people. Uma's smile turned predatory. Have you? Then let's be real. Kelly, let's talk about how you've navigated this industry as a woman, about the compromises you've had to make, the times you've bitten your tongue to keep your platform. Kelly was quiet for a long moment, the silence stretching uncomfortably as she seemed to weigh her options. I've been fortunate to work with people who've supported my vision, she finally said. Fortunate, Uma repeated. What an interesting word choice, not talented, not deserving, but fortunate. Do you think men in your position would describe their success that way? I think gratitude is important regardless of gender, Kelly replied, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Gratitude, Uma said, shaking her head slowly. There it is again. The expectation that women should be grateful for opportunities, that men simply take as their due. Kelly's hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were beginning to show white. I don't think this conversation is going where either of us intended. On the contrary, Uma said, her voice becoming dangerously quiet, I think this conversation is going exactly where it needs to go. The question is whether you have the courage to follow it there. Courage. Kelly's voice sharpened. You're questioning my courage now. I'm questioning your willingness to have the conversations that matter. Uma replied. To use this platform for something more than feel-good fluff, the words hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Kelly's smile had completely disappeared now, replaced by something harder, more determined. You know what, Uma? You want a real conversation. Let's have one. Uma's eyes lit up with something that might have been triumph or might have been anticipation. Now you're talking. Let's talk about respect, Kelly said, her voice gaining power. About how you can make your points without insulting everyone around you. About how real conversations don't require tearing other people down. Tearing people down. Uma's voice rose. Kelly, I'm trying to build something up here, something honest, something that matters. If you can't see the difference, then maybe you're exactly the kind of host I thought you were. The studio had become a pressure cooker, and everyone could feel that something was about to explode. The kind of host I thought I was. Kelly's voice had transformed completely, the warm daytime television persona giving way to something sharper, more formidable. And what kind of host is that exactly? Uma's smile widened, but it wasn't pleasant. The kind who talks about authenticity while delivering exactly what the network wants. The kind who claims to champion women while keeping us all in pretty little boxes marked inspirational and safe. That's enough, Kelly said, her voice cutting through the studio like a whip crack. You don't know anything about my journey, or the fights I've had to have to build this show into something meaningful. Meaningful. Uma laughed, the sound echoing harshly in the suddenly tense space. Kelly, you've created the television equivalent of a warm hug. Nothing wrong with that, but let's not pretend it's revolutionizing anything. Kelly stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward slightly from the force. The audience gasped collectively. Sensing that something unprecedented was happening, "You want to talk about revolution? Let's talk about how you've spent the last 20 minutes attacking someone who invited you here as a guest." Uma remained seated, but her posture radiated defiance. "I'm not attacking you, Kelly. I'm challenging you to be better than the sanitized version of yourself that you present to the world. Better." Kelly's voice cracked with emotion. "You think insulting my show, my career, my choices, makes me better. You think diminishing everything I've worked for is some kind of favor. I think waking you up to the reality of what you're perpetuating might be the most honest conversation you've had on this stage," Uma replied, rising to her feet as well. The two women now faced each other across the coffee table, the physical distance between them somehow making their conflict even more intense. Reality. Kelly's laugh was bitter now. All traces of her usual warmth evaporated. "You want reality? Here's reality, Uma. You're a guest on my show, sitting in my studio, using my platform to tear me down for reasons I can't even begin to understand. You can't understand because you've never had to fight for your voice the way some of us have." Uma shot back, "You've always been the golden girl, the sweetheart who gets to ask the safe questions and receive the grateful answers." Golden girl. Kelly's voice rose to a level that made the front row of the audience lean back in their seats. "You think I haven't fought for everything I have? You think being in this industry has been easy for me because I choose to approach it with positivity instead of cynicism?" Uma's expression hardened. "Positivity doesn't change systems, Kelly. Politeness doesn't challenge power structures. Sometimes you have to be willing to make people uncomfortable if you want to make things better. And you think ambushing me on my own show is making things better?" Kelly demanded. "You think turning what should have been a conversation about your art into a personal attack on my character is productive?" "Personal attack." Uma's voice rose to match Kelly's intensity. "Kelly, everything about this industry is personal. Every interview, every role, every opportunity is filtered through personal biases and systemic inequalities. If you can't see that, you're part of the problem." The studio had become a battlefield. Two intelligent, powerful women locked in a conflict that neither seemed able or willing to back down from. Kelly's hands were trembling slightly. Whether from anger or adrenaline was impossible to tell. "I'm part of the problem." Kelly's voice was incredulous now. "I've spent years building a show that celebrates people, that gives them a platform to share their stories, that brings joy into people's lives during difficult times." "Joy," Uma spat. "While the industry continues to marginalize women, to pay us less, to give us fewer opportunities behind the camera, you're serving up joy. How noble, how dare you?" Kelly whispered, her voice dropping to something almost dangerous. "How dare you come into my space and mock the thing I've dedicated my life to building?" Uma tilted her head, studying Kelly with renewed interest. "Now that's more like it. That's the fire I was looking for. That's the woman who could actually make a difference if she chose to." "I make a difference every day," Kelly said through gritted teeth. "I just don't have to destroy other people to do it, don't you?" Uma asked, her voice deceptively calm. "Tell me, Kelly, how many uncomfortable conversations have you avoided? How many hard truths have you glossed over to keep your audience comfortable?" Kelly stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "You know what your problem is, Uma? You think being difficult makes you profound. You think creating conflict makes you important." Uma's face flushed with anger. "And you think being agreeable makes you authentic. You think avoiding real issues makes you relatable." "Real issues." Kelly's voice cracked with frustration. "You want to talk about real issues? Let's talk about how you've spent our entire conversation tearing down another woman instead of building anything up." The accusation hit Uma like a physical blow, her composed facade cracking for the first time since the interview began. Uma's mouth opened and closed once before she found her voice again, but the composure she'd maintained throughout the confrontation was visibly cracking. "That's not what this is about, isn't it?" Kelly pressed, sensing she'd struck something vital. "You came here with an agenda, Uma. You didn't come to promote your film or have a conversation. You came to prove a point, and you decided to use me and my show as your platform to do it." "I came here to have an honest conversation," Uma replied, but for the first time her voice wavered slightly. "Something that seems to be impossible in spaces like this." "Honest?" Kelly's laugh was sharp now, all pretense of politeness abandoned. "There's nothing honest about what you've done here. You've attacked my integrity, my career, my character, and you're calling it honesty." Uma's hands clenched at her sides. "I've challenged you to be more than what you are. If you can't handle that challenge, maybe you're not the person I hoped you might be. The person you hoped I might be." Kelly's voice rose to a pitch that made several audience members visibly wince. "You don't get to decide who I should be, Uma. You don't get to come into my space and demand that I become your version of what a host should be." "Your space," Uma repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. "How quickly we get to ownership, don't we? This is your space, your show, your rules, and anyone who challenges those rules is clearly out of line." Kelly took a step closer, her usual boundaries completely abandoned. Anyone who comes here as a guest and immediately begins attacking their host is out of line. Yes, that's not challenging rules, Uma. That's basic human decency. Human decency, Uma said, shaking her head slowly. From someone who makes a living, turning real people into entertainment. From someone who profits off of other people's vulnerability while keeping herself safely above it all. Above it all, Kelly's voice cracked with genuine hurt now. I share my life with millions of people every single day. I talk about my struggles, my failures, my pain. How is that keeping myself above anything? Uma paused, something flickering across her face that might have been uncertainty. You share what's safe to share. What fits the narrative? What maintains your brand? My brand. Kelly's laugh was hollow now. My brand is being real with people, Uma. It's showing up authentically, flaws and all. But apparently that's not real enough for you. Real would be admitting that this entire format is designed to avoid the conversations that actually matter. Uma fired back, but there was less conviction in her voice now. And what conversations matter to you? Uma, Kelly demanded. Because, so far, all you've done is tear down everything around you without offering anything constructive in return. Uma was quiet for a moment, her breathing slightly labored from the intensity of their exchange. The conversations about how women like us survive in a system that wasn't built for us. About how we maintain our integrity while playing games we never agreed to play. Women like us, Kelly repeated quietly, something shifting in her expression. You know what, Uma, maybe we are more alike than either of us wants to admit. Maybe we've both found different ways to navigate the same impossible landscape. For a moment, it seemed like the confrontation might transform into something else, some kind of understanding. But Uma's face hardened again. The difference is, I'm not pretending the landscape is beautiful while I navigate it, and I'm not pretending that scorching the earth makes me a warrior. Kelly snapped back, any momentary softness vanishing instantly. Uma stepped around the coffee table, closing the distance between them. At least I'm fighting for something. At least I'm not content to smile and nod while everything stays exactly the same. Fighting for something. Kelly's voice rose to a crescendo. You're not fighting for anything, Uma, you're just fighting. There's a difference between being a warrior for change and being someone who creates conflict because it's the only way. You know how to feel powerful. Uma went completely still, her face pale with fury. How dare you psychoanalyze me? I'm not psychoanalyzing you, Kelly replied, her voice deadly calm now. I'm calling you out the same way you've been calling me out. The difference is, I'm not pretending it's for everyone else's benefit. The silence that followed was deafening. Uma stared at Kelly with an expression that combined shock, rage, and something that looked almost like hurt. The audience held its collective breath, sensing that they were witnessing the exact moment when everything would either explode or implode. You know what? Uma said finally, her voice quiet but vibrating with contained emotion. You're right, this conversation isn't going where either of us intended. Kelly remained perfectly still, watching Uma's face carefully. No, it's not. Uma took a step back, then another, her eyes never leaving Kelly's face. I think we're done here, Uma, Kelly started, but Uma was already turning away, her decision made. Thank you for having me, Uma said, her voice returning to something resembling professionalism, though it was strained to the breaking point. I hope your audience got the authentic conversation they deserved. Without another word, Uma Thurman walked off the set, her heels clicking against the studio floor in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown to detonation. Kelly stood frozen for a moment, watching her leave, before slowly sinking back into her chair. The studio erupted into chaos as producers rushed around. Audience members whispered frantically to each other. And Kelly sat alone on her set, staring at the empty chair where Uma had been sitting just moments before. So there you have it, the most explosive daytime television moment we've seen in years. What did you think about this incredible clash between two powerhouse women? Was Uma justified in her confrontational approach, or did she cross the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more shocking celebrity moments that you won't see anywhere else.